I'm Prabhu, PM at Hapsa, and thank you so much for joining in today on a Saturday evening. Please drop in your intro and from where you are joining in the chat below. And today we are going to go to discuss on like how to build a community that exceeds about 2 million messages a day. And this is a part of a speaker series where broad managers come and share their experiences. And today we have Hammer with us, who is the ex VP product at Doubtnet, and also the AVP at Scalar, who is in charge of the paid pod of experience. So let's welcome Hammer to the stream today. Hey, hi Amir.
Hey, hi, Prabhu. I'm glad to sort of get a chance to speak to you and the community. Yeah.
Awesome. So, like we have structured this discussion into four parts. So the first part is about understanding the landscape of NHB, and
Okay.
the second part is about like deep diving into the edtech space and understanding the market of edtech. And the third part is about uh, how you build this community and the intricacies for building your community. And the last part is on the version of feedback and choosing it to build the next version of our product. So let's get started on it.
Sure.
Cool. So Hammer, can you explain more about like what exactly is NHB about and why it is important or relevant to talk about them right now?
Sure, sure, Prabhu. So basically, I think if you look at the how the Indian and world population is sort of divided, I think covering first India, I think out of the 1 billion odd sort of people who are there, I think currently 500 sort of million population has been sort of active and has access to smartphone or sort of basic devices, and this population is sort of like if you look at an exact number, I think as you have mentioned in the deck, it's around 658 million internet users. And out of them, sort of while we refer to the tier 1 users, so they are basically 180 million internet users who basically have been using internet, let's say from past at least started to know about internet, what technology is since last 10 years, and have been an active user since those years. And if you look at currently, they cannot imagine their life, people like us, without having access to internet even for a single minute. I think we get jittery when we lose access to wi-fi and our networks are not working, or if the speed is slow. uh, and I think all of us know, if Google goes down for a second, everyone sort of it's a trending news that sort of becomes. So what we actually want to look at is that approximately outside these, there are 500 million internet users who have sort of started using this internet in the last couple of years. Nobody is actually talking about them, because what happens is that a lot of people have been facing like have got access to internet, credits to Geo and Mr. Ambani, that he has sort of gave all of us sort of access to good quality internet at a very very high speed. So that is something that when these people started to use, they were not very habitual to what internet is, what are the tenets of it. And basically a lot of people like Amazon, Google, etc., have started to focus on these people, because the next leg of growth can actually come from these set of folks. So these set of folks, and if we look at the size also, right, while some of them have already come online, and some there's a potential of approximately 250 million users probably coming online in the next sort of 3 to 5 years. So if we account for them, they constitute from India itself 500 million users who are potentially called as the next half billion users, whom a lot of the products that we currently have are not sort of built in the way that they can understand that. So it's very important that we start thinking about them as a community. And if we look at Google, Amazon, Facebook, and a lot of Indian startups, they have actually started to pay attention for them, have very dedicated programs catered to them. But it's high time that we all, as product community, also start understanding about them and start taking into account the nitty-gritty of building for the next half billion users. Just to add, while 500 million users from India are expected to sort of come online or have already come online in the last couple of years, if we look at the world population, a lot of users from Africa, Southeast Asia are also part of basically what Google calls as the next billion users or NBUs. So basically, a lot of users from Southeast Asia, Africa also would be accounting to the other half billion. And totally, if we look at large monopolies like Google, etc., they account for 1 billion users who have not started to experience internet in the way we do or smartphones in the way we do, and hence a lot of focus has started to go on them.
Awesome. So, like, can you give more details about like how the first half billion users differ from the next half billion users in the terms of usage of a smartphone, or how do their needs actually differ?
Sure, definitely. So I think if we look at the first half million users, right, or basically the first half billion users who have basically come online in the last 10 years, and compare them with users who have come online in the last second year, like last 2 3 years, or would come online in the next 2 3 years, there's a massive difference in how these people are sort of how they perceive technology, how they use devices, how they interface with their applications. So a lot of these people, since they spend considerable time of their lives actually offline and away from technology, they are still warming up to what actually are the powers of different applications that exist out there, how the smartphone should be used, how they should sort of connect to sort of these devices and apps. So I'll give an example, Prabhu. So basically, while for us Wi-Fi is a very core need, we have been interfacing with a lot of NHB products, and we understand that 95% or greater of the users have never connected those apps using an Wi-Fi ecosystem. They are still running on 4G, 3G, and 2G, which is a great insight, because then while you are building products for them, you have to account that they will be on a crappy internet. If you look at their devices that these kind of people use, their devices at max 90% or greater would be using device positioned in the market or being sold in the market lower 10,000. So basically positioned as a low end device, though has smartphone capabilities but doesn't has all the features that a lot of devices that we use will be having. So I think these are a couple of things, internet and the kind of smartphones, but these people, they have been living their life offline, and hence we have to drive their behavior from an offline economy to an online economy, and that will sort of take a lot of efforts from them to start using and trusting us, and for us to become a trusted platform or an application that they start using for different products.
Interesting, Amar. So, can you describe a real story of an NHP interaction which you had? So, to get a feel of like of what exactly a NHP person goes through.
So yeah, actually, I think I was speaking to this user actually, as who sort of we interacted as part of a user research trip from 60 kilometers from Banaras, where we had gone to sort of understand how their learning behavior has changed post COVID. And we reached out to that person, and that person had got a phone during COVID time, a smartphone for the first time. He was a class sort of eighth user, if I remember, and because of COVID and lack of access to technology or lack of access to smartphone or internet, they had not studied anything for the last 2 years, and they had dropped off the school. And post COVID sort of started to relax out. They started to go back to school, and their parents, while sort of had taken a loan for them to get to access to a smartphone, and for so only though, so that the kid can start studying actually. So that so when we interacted with him, that kid was really really happy and was amazed at the kind of device or technology a smartphone is because now using that smartphone, that kid was able to study. So it seemed like a completely different world for that person, which he had never sort of examined. And he was very sort of, while I remember, so he showed me that, Bhaiya, have you ever sort of done a voice search on YouTube, and I can just speak out and YouTube will play a song for me. And he was amazed in type of interactions that we have sort of like they have been getting exposure to the first time. So I think this is the sort of experience that I remember, Prabhu, where these people, because they didn't have access to technology and internet, they had to lose 2 years worth of education time, had to drop out of school. So if we look at the kind of impact we can create for these communities who are coming online, I think that is really, really massive. So I think this story itself speaks about how far they are, but yeah, they are willing to come forward and interact with sort of all the technology out there.
Super cool, Amar. And the other day, there was a post that 65% of users continue to use a broken device. So, any other interesting trends or yeah, insights about this audience, Amar?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Thanks a lot, Prabhu. I think that was a very, very interesting insight which we came across. So basically, just going back to the fact for everyone out here who is there and attending this event. So approximately 65% users, if we look at in tier 3 and tier 4, continue. If we ask them that whether they will stop using their device if the device or screen sort of cracks and if they cannot get it replaced, and their answer is simply a yes, that they would continue to. Because what happens is that in a lot of these families, once the device gets sort of difficult to use, the parents generally sort of for some time try to use and stick to them. Because if we look at 10,000, which is an average amount for us, but for them, 10,000 can sometimes be a monthly income or even a bi-monthly income for them. And hence, what they do is they sort of hence they sort of try and stick to the product, like the device that they have. And in most cases, this device is only passed on to basically the next generation or the small kids that are there, because a lot of these kids are actually face a lot of challenge in sort of accessing and getting access to their devices, because it's very costly. So basically depend a lot on their parents device. So while the parents actually sort of have access to their device, they generally share it for 1 hour or 2 hours with their kids. But whenever these devices get broken, they simply pass it on to their sort of kids and family members or their wives. I have actually, while this is a reported figure as per research done by Google, we also see a lot of cases where, while I was visiting my hometown, basically a tier 2 town, the maid that used to come in our home actually had a cracked device. And she mentioned that it is her husband's device, and he has given her post he started to feel some difficulty because he didn't want or couldn't afford a new device for her. So yeah, that's a really good point, Prabhu, that you brought.
And because it is a 500 million audience, so when we are thinking about building for this particular audience, any structure for the thought process as PMs while building it up?
I think something that is very, very critical to this, Prabhu, while building for these users is to actually nothing else but spend time with these folks and understand what are the sort of challenges that they face on a day-to-day level, how they think about solving different problems. For example, they have their own value system set, right? And they want to prefer to do things in that way only. If we try and introduce technology in a way that replaces or challenges their existing value systems or beliefs, then they sort of stop believing in that, because have been sort of brought up, as I mentioned, that most of their lives they have spent living offline, living away from sort of access to 4G, access to smartphones. So they sort of believe that whatever sort of we try and do, we have to stick with their real life environment. For example, I think one of the case studies that we have also shared from the NHB community and we read about is that a lot of these people have never visited a shopping mall, but a lot of these apps that we come up with, a lot of social commerce apps or e-commerce app for Bharat, have a card concept. So these people have never interacted with a shopping mall. They have never held a shopping cart, and they do not understand the logic behind it. So even for a while, sort of Amazon, for their Hindi version, had changed the icon of the card to a jhula or a bag, so that people understand that they are collating the items and keeping in a bag, and then they are sort of paying for it. So I think those are the, I think, while there are thousands of other things that we have to do, Prabhu, I think the core of it has to be that we start living with them, we understand, we research a lot, and then only we sort of start building for them. It would not happen that we are sitting in the offices in Bangalore and Delhi and we sort of try and understand the idiosyncrasies of building for Bharat, I think, or the next half billion. It is very important we sort of understand and research properly for them.
Cool, Amar. So now let us zoom in into the edtech market. So can you help us understand the landscape of edtech users, and how does it work, especially for NHB of population edtech?
Got it. Got it. I think if we look at, I think out of the total population that India has, I think out of them, as you have rightly, I hope everyone can see the screen. So there are approximately 126 million users who account from the class 8 to class 12 bucket in India. And out of them, sort of if we look at, there would be approximately sort of 30 million who are NHB users. So basically, if I take example of Doubtnet as an application or a lot of other applications, 80 to 90% of their traffic comes from basically the Bharat users or the NHP users. Why does that happen? Is basically that in tier one markets, a lot of students already have access to high quality tuition or other means of sort of other help and ancillary services that they can get used to basically prepare outside school. Also, if we look at the ratio of how these students are visiting the schools, so in tier 1 markets, 70% students actually visit private schools, but it is vice versa in as we move towards the NHP audience, because 70% of them actually go to government funded or actually government schools. So when they start going to there is a long way that we have to go in building the ecosystem, right, of government schools. So there the quality of education and support provided to for better learning is very very poor. So a lot of the NHP users who are going to government schools currently have no other support or no other very support system other than sort of using edtech to sort of learn more and to get better access to good quality teachers. If we, I think all of us know about the sort of success story of physics wala. So I think the core value that he was generating was they were like sir was speaking in Hindi and English most of the time, and a lot of students from UP were able to actually relate to him. And these students did not have access to sort of buy the sort of get a private tuition or a home tutor, which a lot of students in tier 1 can do easily. But these students actually had no option but to consume free content on YouTube, and they also have a limit of 1 GB per day because most of them are living on a day very very cheap geo data pack. So they started consume his content and they were relate to it because it was highly vernacular in nature. He was using the local languages and to communicate, and I think that really fueled that sort of the aspect. So and just to summarize, I think edtech, if it has to grow, it has to grow vernacular in nature, because 70 to 80% of the users that will take them hands-on, because they are deprived of quality education, will come from the sort of tier 2 or markets or on.
Awesome, Amar. And when it is coming to your immersion study, like why did you feel that there is a need to actually do a study here? Like what was missing, and what did you want to discover?
Sure, sure, sure. So actually, we did an immersion study for the benefit of everyone listening, where what we wanted to actually do is that we wanted to understand that how has education patterns changed in students across the last 2 years when COVID was happening, because we were sitting in offices and building products and doing a lot of iteration and credits to absorb. We had a lot of user data insights about metrics. Credits to UX cam, we could see how users are navigating different features. But we still believe that getting in-person feedback from the user was something that was really missing during the COVID duration. So what we did is that we actually decided that we will pack our bags, and for sort of at least 7 to 10 days, we will go ahead and sort of live with NHB users who sort of form 60 to 70% core of sort of most of the edtech apps. And we were doing this study for Doubtnut, and what we realized is that a lot of these students had actually lost complete access to education, and they were just restarting their sort of studies from a school perspective, and all that they have learned in the last couple of years was basically through WhatsApp or through YouTube, and most of them on their own free wills. Because if all of us might remember, actually government, because they realized this challenge, they passed most of the students even if they were failing. So any learning that happens was of the free wills of the student. So that is one thing that we realized, and what we realized is that a lot was lost in terms of education in the 2 years, and a lot of students actually wanted that again they can learn from their peers, and they were missing that connection from their peers while learning. And hence one of the interesting thing that came up was that teachers were telling us that earlier they had to earlier in the tier 3 towns, midday meal was the only sort of leverage that teachers had to sort of invite students to school. And despite that, the attendance used to reach 50% or sort of 60% at max. But post COVID, the students are so excited to meet the teachers and the friends, because they have been staying at their home for 2 years, that they're rushing back to schools, and they have to arrange extra chairs, and because they never thought that the school would run at full occupancy. So a lot of peer connection is what we thought the students needed. Also revision, basically what we understood is that even if a student is coming from class 8th, right, because they were passed by the government, they might not have the right kind of context to pick up things immediately from class 8 or whatever level they want to learn from. So we understood that an important type of content called as a refresher has to be developed, so that they can quickly go through the classes content which they have not learned, and then they can sort of do that. So it was very important product learning, because what we had started to see is that post COVID there were higher drop off rates, and that was happening because a lot of students who were coming to class 8th, for example, but not understanding the content, because they had actually really not studied the class 6th and 7th content. So there I think it was a lot of learning for us, where once they used to open the app, we ping them that are you sure, like for example, you can take this assessment and understand what is the level of your understanding, and then you can go through the refresher content and then proceed with your learning.
Cool. So, while doing your immersion study, can you explain like more about the economics in which these people belong to? Like, how is their family background like? What kind of environment they live in? How are their attention spans? And what kind of devices they use, and in which environment do they use them normally?
Got it, got it. So I think a lot of these users were basically coming from families that sort of are earning somewhere in the range of 10 to 40,000 per month. A lot of these users actually live in a one or two room sort of home is what they sort of do. A lot of the parents' occupation is basically farmers, cobblers, or sort of day wage laborers, or basically general shopkeepers. So that is where basically there are two main constraints: is that they don't have access to proper financial resources, and hence that limits their day-to-day access to technology, smartphones, etc. And also they don't have the proper guidance to sort of understand that what they should do next in terms of education or a lot of other things. So there is no, I think, mentor kind of persona that exists who might have access to a lot of technology or who might know devices. All of these folks are trying to struggle through their access of technology, understanding of the applications, how to use about that. So that is why there is a collective sort of belief in them, that whenever they are able to relate to a particular app or a product or a video which they are very very confident that this is something that relates to their community, they actually stick to it, and it goes viral within the NHB audience.
And how is the internet and online experiences like what do they consume or where do they shop from?
So I think a lot of these NHP audience actually shop from the nearby grocers that grocery shops that actually exist. If we think about sort of how they shop from Blinkit and sort of Grofers and sort of other apps that exist, I think that is very far fetched. For them, it is like for them buying from a nearby shop is actually an outing kind of an experience where they go and discuss with the shopkeeper about their daily life, and they sort of go with either of a neighbor or meet people sitting alongside the shop and interact with them. So for them also, while these things are very important, they trust that the shopkeeper will be the nearby shopkeeper will actually be giving them very valuable and trustworthy goods, because if it doesn't work they can immediately go back in an hour and return that on the face and say that because they know there are years of relationship that exists. So I think those people prefer to sort of purchase from nearby shops, and a lot of that is not only from a discount perspective or relationship perspective, but also because of the convenience that shopping for them is a group activity and not an individual experience, like for most of us as living in nuclear families or alone in Bangalore, Delhi, and sort of Bombay.
And coming to mobile apps, so what kind of apps do they use? So how do they discover that an app exists? And if they have a problem with an app, so whom do they reach out to? And what are the challenges which they have in understanding while using mobile apps?
Got it, got it. So, Prabhu, I think that's a great question. That how do they discover apps? So, if you look at how they download apps, right? I think I'll revert back to one interesting discussion we had couple of years back, where Firebase was telling us different app downloads number, and Appsor was telling us different app download numbers, and then we actually I think spent at least 2 3 days on sort of draining down with Manokna and other folks as to what why there are difference in numbers, and then we understood that a lot of those application downloads that were happening were not through Google Play Store or basically through other medium, but were basically files shared on WhatsApp, and then people downloading the applications from WhatsApp itself. So a lot of the people actually in NHP audience do not discover the products for the first time, basically from Google Play Store or from advertisement. I think they basically discover these applications and these through word of mouth or basically through WhatsApp. So basically, a lot. I think the word of mouth in community is a very big strength for the NHP audience. So these people actually immediately start and sort of start trusting they trust their peers a lot. So for example, today, Prabhu, if you are my friend as an NHP audience, and if you are using Free Fire as a game app, I will be intrigued at what is Prabhu doing, and because the connectivity and the social element is still very alive in these users, they will immediately want to download their app, and they will not go to Play Store and search for that. They will immediately ask you that, Prabhu, can you WhatsApp me or can you share it with me? So basically, with Xiaomi phones, they have a particular application that they use a lot. And incidentally, if we look at, I think 5 to 6% of the downloads of these applications are also driven by Xiaomi Play Store and other native Vivo Play Store. So a lot of these sort of folks depend also what on Xiaomi and Vivo as a particular device are sort of motivating them to download, and not basically through Google Play Store. So Google Play Store is still very native for them.
And if you are comparing the first half the billion edtech user and the next half billion edtech users, so what are the differences in behavior or in demographics or in other things like which you have seen on this?
Sure. I think there are two major differences. One is sort of in consumption of content. I think in while we look at the consumption of content, I think the first billion edtech users basically learn in English. So they basically can be tagged roughly as the CBSE or the ICSE board users or the IB users in India. who are studying under those sort of boards. If you look at the next half billion edtech users, they primarily cater to the state boards education system in India, and they want to learn in the vernacular language, their mother tongue, and they understand all the core concepts in that language. So if you're building a product that is basically in the NHP space, and particularly in EdTech, your videos and your instructors should basically speak in that language. And basically, because if you speak in English, they would not be able to understand beyond the limit. Second is basically, while we are sort of speaking about this, a lot of the NHP education sort of enthusiasts or users basically are they want to focus on basics a lot, because these people in their government schools are not able to even understand a lot of basic elements. But if we look at the first half billion users in the education domain in India, a lot of them get their basics cleared in sort of the school ecosystem or the tuitions. They come online or to the edtech ecosystem to even prepare better than their peers and look for difficult things. So those are basically the things which segregate these users: the consumption language and type of content that is being consumed. And then there are a thousand other nitty-gritties. You cannot build for example, the NHB audience doesn't like to read a lot. If you have to teach them through a video. And I think physics walas are used to do a lot of dramatic and very interesting explanations on a video setup, and a lot of students used to stick to them because they don't have long reading sort of behavior. They can consume content through sort of videos and voice. So I think that also is a very very massive difference, because while I was coming up, and a lot of tier 1 users, if you look at right now, they want to sort of go through a lot of content. uh, yeah.
And while coming to the community aspect, can you tell more about how problem solving community? So, what exactly it was the problem which you were facing while moving your metrics, and what are the insights which you got, and yeah.
Got it, Prabhu. So I think one of the core problems that we were facing, and I think a lot of NHB product and all the apps and all the product folks who have joined us in this talk would sort of relate to, is that a lot of these people download the app the first day. They try to understand, and if they understand it's good, they will do the prime use case that they downloaded the app for, and then they will uninstall the app the same very day once their use case is done, or they will download the app the next or couple of days when their device basically has low storage sort of capabilities. Or so if they have to download the app for any other use case, they will delete the education app first, and then they will start downloading the games apps, and then they will start, because that is an entertainment, right? So basically, one of the major challenges that we were facing, Prabhu, is in terms of recency, frequency, and retention. Because a lot of students actually used to come, get their doubts solved, and like while I was working at Doubtnut, they used to come, download the app, ask let's say 15 questions today, but they will uninstall the app at the end of the day, or they will uninstall in a couple of days. Two prime reasons, basically because they were NHP users, so they were using their parents' devices. So once they used to give back, they used to download and delete sort of all the apps that they had downloaded for their use case in the hour that they got access to the device. And the second bit was, Prabhu, was that a lot of these users actually have very very short time, span in terms of the interest in a product. So while even if you are able to solve the first time user experience challenge, which obviously is a topic for another day, if these people understand your product, let's say, and then they use it, they have a habit of sort of uninstalling it or sort of forgetting it. And as a doubts, as a use case, they used to ask their doubts and then they used to forget it. And then the next time they might download any other app, they get simply on the Play Store, or they speak with their friends about. So making sure that we stick to the user's mindset was a very very interesting problem that we decided to solve. Just to give you numbers, I think our first day uninstalls were somewhere in the range of 45 to 50% at one time. So basically, 50% users, if you spend a lot on the marketing and get them, and after using your core product within the application also install, that is a serious challenge that we were facing. So we spent a lot to understand why that was happening, and it was primarily a lot in terms of how these users are actually operating, where they download an app, get done with what they want, and then uninstall it. So that's a very core behavior given by a lot of things, that sort of devices and then access to internet and a lot of other problems.
Got it, Amar. So, like, what was the approach you used to figure out that users are only asking doubts a couple of times a week, and then understanding like what could a daily use case be?
So basically, I think once we looked at Prabhu, I think one of the core problem that we realized is while the device was an issue and they were uninstalling the app, the other core things was that if you build an application or you build a product where people are not investing anything, then the next time they come, right, even so the next time I go, my experience or the doubt that I ask, I will get the same type of answer irrespective whether I kept the app for 7 days or whether I sort of have just downloaded the app. Why Google sort of like since we log into Google and we keep doing all the searches, the next time that I make a search, the search results for me and you might be very very different basis the context Google has about us. But let's say Google was a vanilla search result where every time you search at any location at after any like 5 days of usage of product or 5,000 days, if it would have given the same search result, then it doesn't matter, right? If I stick to Google or every I keep the application. So basically, when we look at an NHP user perspective, they do not understand this that if they keep it for longer, whether the results would change or not. And to be true, we were not changing it. For example, today, even if you as a user, Prabhu, have kept the app for 100 days and you ask it out, we will give you the same answer, which is more relevant to your question despite you keeping. One thing that we might want to do is that use the information in which language you are watching the solutions to basically better serve you answers in that particular language, but outside that we would not do anything. And then we also looked at, we stayed with a lot of these users across the country, we visited a lot of cities, and what we analyzed is that a lot of users since class 10th or 11th also until they're appearing for IIT or stuff, generally sit down to study or sort of solve their problems generally in a week 2 or 3 times at max, and not more than that, and mostly it is once a week that they would sit down to. The second thing is that these people, since they come from an NHP community, they get access to the device on a very very uh, like on a very very rare basis and also for a very short duration. So let's say today we have a chance that whether we have to do some work or we can get access to Netflix and watch, so or basically YouTube, so they prefer to sort of whatever limited time. Let's say if we look at the app usage for Doubtnut and a lot of other NHP app which are focused on kids, you will see that the spikes in the usage occurs between 7 to 9 p.m. And why is that? Because most of the cases, the parents actually come back from work at 7 p.m. and give their device to the kid to actually use it for some time. And then the kid has to proactively take the onus that they will sort of only look at the education app, which fails lot of time. And hence, these people generally keep their days whenever they'll get the device and they will look at the doubts. So what was happening was since let's say in a week I take the device from you once, Prabhu, and then I ask your doubts, ask my doubts, and then I sort of give the device back to the parent. The parent may not have a lot more context that what is there in these applications, because the device is a low end device. They will uninstall the app which they do not understand. But so these were few kind of challenges which we were facing, and hence we had to sort of make sure. And what used to happen, an interesting figure is that out of the users who used to uninstall the first day, we used to see 20 to 25% of them coming back in the same week. So they used to reinstall, but 75% of them never used to return. So they used to forget about the app. They used to basically download any other app, or they used to sort of basically stop using basically from a doubt perspective. So there were few use cases which obviously we could solve, and hence what we wanted, Prabhu, is that once the user comes back on the app for the first time, how do we make sure that these users make an investment on the first day itself into the application, which they are worried about losing in the future, and makes them either request their parents to keep the app or they sort of use the app regularly. So that is what we wanted to do.
Cool, Amar. And can you elaborate on few approaches which you used to get to that insight, and how it actually turned out for you?
Yeah, yeah. So basically, what we wanted to understand is that there were also a lot of other doubt solving applications. So basically, what these students used to do is that either they used to, unless all the students who don't have a very clear friend pushing them to use Doubtnut, they would every time go on the Play Store, let's say Xiaomi Play Store or Vivo Play Store, and they would type doubt solving. And whichever app on that day, by God's wish, comes on the top, they will download it, ask their doubt, and then that be done with it. So what we wanted to do, Prabhu, is that we wanted to sort of make sure that they understand in great detail why Doubtnut is the best application for basically solving doubts, and they stick with it, and also request their parents to keep the device when they are not using it primarily. So what we this was an interesting attempt. So what we did for the first time is that we came up with a very gamified form of learning, where we said that you can come and practice sort of a test in a gamified approach, and you get some points, and basis points you get some coupons, let's say, which are related to your educational spends, or can work as, let's say, PTM cash, because we realized that a lot of these students, one of the core reasons that they mentioned they were not studying regularly is that their recharge used to get over, and they couldn't get enough like money collated in a short time to get recharges. So what we said is that if you study on the app, we will give you coupons which you can after 7 days use for recharge. But what we started to sort of do and see is that since we had at the core built a solution that was based on academics, and a lot of students had to study, while this got a lot of traction, but they immediately used to sort of get a low ticket recharge on basis of playing the game and sort of winning the quiz hundreds of times. And then we have seen sort of students playing 10,000 games in a single day. We don't know how, but they played 10,000 games in a single day to qualify for that recharge coupon, get that, and then uninstall the app again. So we realized that if the gamification aspect of it and the fun aspect of it was not enough, or the reward aspect of it was not enough in terms of investment, that they were able to understand that they should keep this off for longer. Our retention, our engagement metrics obviously boosted up a lot, but the retention and install didn't move a lot because of this. So we realized that what exactly, yeah, exactly, this is that we can see that a lot of trend used to dip. So basically most of the students ask the doubts once a week, and even if we release some gamification features, they were not sticking for it for a longer. The same day that they used to ask for the doubts, that was the same day that these users actually used to play these games and uninstall again. So again, we brainstormed the Prabhu, and I think what really helped us was user research. So we went ahead and stayed with these users, and we understood that while we were visiting these users, we asked the student one simple question, that why does he come to school? And he told us that he comes to school because he gets to learn with his friend, and not only for learning, or not only from the friend, but he gets to learn with his friend. So what we wanted to do is that already while I was sort of leading this product at Outnet, we had approximately 2.5 million users, and even if we sort of did a pin code analysis, we had thousands of users coming from the same pin code, speaking the same language, and studying for the same board, and with a similar usage pattern. So what we thought that we will do is that we thought that a solution that can bind these people together, where because they are not able to connect with each other outside the school ecosystem, sometimes, why not give them a platform where they can connect and learn together? So what we did is that we started with an experiment for study group, basically building a community of these students to learn together, and then basically using it for them to stick longer. Also, we had seen this behavior that the friendship is a very important aspect of offline learning. if you look at why a lot of people still want to go to tuitions and school is to meet their friends and learn with them. So what we wanted to understand is that whether if we replicate the same thing in an online setup, can we drive retention like a lot of tuition teachers do, because they stick to like they a lot of students, I think, across years keep going back to the same tuition over and over again because of the long friendships that form. Even if the teacher is not contributing, they will stick to the same tuition. So that is what we wanted to do, Prabhu, and hence we came up with the product idea called as study groups, where the first day, post you ask a doubt, if we were able to solve that, or if we were not, we will sort of recommend that why not try out the community which has people studying in the same language, coming from the same region like you. And this was our attempt of creating communities, basically with the similar persona, for who were trying to sort of solve the same thing, and then linking them up for discussion. So the idea was that if we are able to frame friendships between these people, and if the conversation gets started, I think they will definitely keep the app for longer, stick for longer, and come back the next day. Because if the next day, for example, you uninstall the app and the next time you form, and there was a friendship that was already formed, let's say I come from Bihar class 11th and I'm preparing, and you also come from the same sort of region and are preparing, and if I can interact with you and I understand that you can be really helpful in my education, but if I uninstall the app, my chances of finding you are very very rare, so I would stick with the app for longer. So that is what we actually finally boiled down as a solution that we wanted to stick to.
So, what are other experiments which you tried out to move your metrics of retention and DAU, and to decrease your uninstalls?
But yeah, so as I mentioned, one was the gamification experiment where we sort of created a small quiz where these learners in obviously in the local languages could sort of attempt for quizzes, win more rewards, and sort of improve. So what it did is that it increased our engagement sort of a lot, but we were not able to boost our retention through the same. We also came up with the reward system. So we created a project or a small product called as Daily Goal, where basis your class, your board, your language, we created a small set of tasks for them. Something called as daily nuggets, basically kind of approach. So you basically come and you basically get aligned on the product daily as part of the daily nugget, and you learn a video, you complete an exercise, and you do things. But all of these solutions somehow didn't sort of cater or require any investment from the user that they will be worried about losing in the future. So that is what we were not able to build, and hence every time we were releasing a feature, we were basically able to increase engagement further, but it didn't impact on the retention as such, because the pull of bringing the user back or occupying their mind space, that there is something that is lagging lacking, and they should go back and check in the app, that was not getting created. All these rewards etc we saw were boosting the engagement, but were not boosting retention, and hence what we finally gained a lot from was basically the retention product study group that I mentioned.
So,
So
can you explain?
really, yeah, sorry.
Can you explain more about the qualitative study which you have done, and the inferences from that particular qualitative study which actually led to this study group feature?
Yeah, I think as you have shared, so this is basically a user persona map of one of the user coming from like class 8 from UP, age 13 years. And one of the core pain points that person had during COVID, that he or she is not able to sort of talk to my friends after, like general pain points, and then during COVID we'll explore both of them. So general pain point that we used to see is that they are not able to talk to their friends on sort of phone also after school, because a lot of these folks live very far from each other. Actually, if you look at tier 3 and tier 4 communities, a lot of these homes are actually very very far, and for them to be easily able to travel to them with their mother's permission really gets difficult from for a lot of perspective, and hence they really wanted a place where they can interact with similar mind of folks at on a regular basis. So that is something that was sort of not happening at a regular interval, and hence this was the pain point that we really figured out a lot. And then one interesting observation that we had was that when we were speaking to Sanskar, and one thing that he mentioned, that while we all believe that the NHP audience will get exposure to live gaming and consumption years later, they are already consuming sort of one of the local figure playing a game real time. And they follow a channel called as Ajju Bhaiya, which has I think 26.8 million subscribers coming from UP, Bihar, and all these kids are very very excited to sort of understand that what he's playing and how he's playing, and he just shares his screen live, and a lot of students are really crazy, sort of following what he's doing in a live game. So what we and then they come back to the school the next day because they are not able to interact with their friend later, that what did they observe while that person was playing, and how what he or she could have done better. And then a lot of interesting discussion happens around this, and that was their trigger to bring them back to school the next day. So basically, once we were able to realize this, I think the qualitative insight that we got is that peer-to-peer learning, or basically the peer aspect of learning, which offline education has been providing after, I think, since a long time, actually is one of the key aspects why a lot of people go to school or tuition. And if we are able to replicate the same thing online, I think that should be a real game changer. So these couple of insights actually understood that people like to sort of be attached with their friends and discuss with them on real event, and they want that connection to even exist outside the school boundaries, and sort of in an environment where they can catch up regularly. So yeah, those were the two qualitative insights probably.
Can you explain different patterns which these users had, and what is their perspective about it?
Definitely, definitely. I think all of these are sort of users coming from tier 3 and tier 4 cities in India. And so, a lot of these users, if we look at others, she's saying, oh, पापा फोनवा लेके चल जाते हैं, कैसे करें, दिन भर में 2 घंटा फोन मिलता है. So this was his response to the question that why he doesn't study regularly on Doubtnut, and he mentioned that his father actually takes away the phone, and whenever he gets the phone it is only for 2 hours, and then it's very difficult to prioritize education if you have 2 hours access to a phone. It is a lot of other entertainment apps that get prioritized for him. And then basically Puneet from class 8th is also one of the users that we met, and he mentioned that थोड़ा देर के लिए मिलता है तो लगता है तनी गाना सुन लेते हैं, a video देख लेते हैं. तो he really sort of whenever he gets the phone, which is mostly for a very low time, he tries to sort of use it for entertainment. And then we also saw one interesting fact while visiting these communities, is that while the boy child used to get access, or the male child used to get access to the device even for an hour or two on most of the days, the girl childs were generally sort of were requested to refrain from getting access to the devices, which a lot of sort of female students mentioned to us that their usage of Doubtnut or even any other application is considerably lower because they find it very difficult to convince their parents or fathers particularly to give them the device. And it's basically this still the community is developing and is sort of bringing up, but that also is something that is mentioned that they generally get it find it very difficult to get their hands on the device.
And how are these the qualitative insights and perspectives which you have got from users validated at the quantitative level?
Got it. I think a lot of this validation primarily happened because of so basically rather than going full fledged into a feature approach, what we did is that we started to measure in the app if there are already indicators that reflect it quantitatively, that whether students really want to connect with other students, and that can help us not only reduce uninstalls but also boost retention on an overall level. And I think the metrics that we sort of measured was that we started to see in the last since COVID that number of comments happening on our videos had started to drastically increase. And one day, while we were sort of accidentally, we came across a particular comment which mentioned that the video solution was slightly wrong, and we started to go through different other comments that had come on it. We saw that rather than about the video, these were particularly chat threads that were existing between a lot of students. So what we saw was that when we pulled out the data, approximately 20% students were already interacting on the app who came to ask a question in chat threads that were getting sort of developed on comment section of the videos, and not particularly within the different product that existed. So that gave us a lot of quantitative validation that without having a proper product, the need is so high that 20% of the daily active users are still sort of engaging in communicating with each other, and they really enjoy the process. And for these users, second data that we actually looked at, the retention was very very high, and the retention was like very high. I mean, approximately 2x of our normal app retention, and it was basically driven by the fact that whenever they used to leave a comment, they used to wait for the other person to respond as a reply to their comment. And sometimes we used to delete the comment because sometimes we used to violate some guidelines and etc. But these people used to figure out a lot of bypasses that how they can sort of restart those conversations with the right set of people. So what we understood from this Prabhu, the data and stuff, is that a lot of these users basically really want to have the social connection, because in their normal life, if you look at, right, school is the only place where they can express themselves freely. But after that came, since their homes are very limited and are far from other folks home, they are not able to build those connections. So they really want to build and those connections and express themselves with their peers. And that is what we really thought that would be good if we can build an experiment.
And any other surveys which were launched here to help enhance the understanding? Or
Definitely, definitely. I think credits to Absorb. We have been able to run very, very contextual surveys on the application for all our users. So we ran those a lot for like Doubtnut. And I think what we did is that for users who are very happy on the app and who were older users, we used to run those surveys triggering on the homepage for them. And a lot of these users actually used to mention to us that what they need is a chat feature to sort of interact with other sort of students. And we used to collect regularly that what do you think is the feedback, and in feedback one of the things that used to come up was this. And then before beginning, we actually ran contextual surveys for people who were interacting on the sort of these comment thread. And then we understood their need, and we understood that what do they use these comments for. And a lot of these 60% of them actually mentioned that they use it for basically interacting with the other person on what could have been sort of what are the particularly doubts that they are getting, or how they could have solved the question better. And these were interaction threads developing around peer-to-peer education on the place that we had never assumed that they would. And all of these learners then gave us a lot of quantitative data as well, that as I mentioned, improving metrics and stuff. And by running surveys, we were able to further validate.
and any other learnings from other apps which have actually built a community like Meesho, ShareChat, or Telegram?
I think that's a great question. But one thing that sort of we sort of noticed is that if you look at the personas of all of these applications or the TG that they are trying to acquire, I think all of these are very, very good community-led apps, social commerce, e-commerce, and then ShareChat is completely sort of based on a community aspect of sharing stuff, and then Telegram. No persona sort of really matched the persona, Prabhu, that we were chasing after, which was sort of kids coming from the tier 2 onwards and sort of less than 18 years of age. So while we did a lot of research and we tried to sort of pick up important sort of learnings from these, but there was no such single product for kids that was existing which we could go ahead and simply copy or sort of build as a sort of uh, taking as an inspiration. So that is where we had to start from scratch, because and even if we look at the Western world and a lot of products that exist, There is no sort of dedicated product that exists that promotes interaction or peer-to-peer learning on a massive scale for kids. And hence, we had to sort of only take the experimentation route for any learning that we had to sort of do. And hence, we figured out that we'll start with an MVP round. We'll launch something on the lines that we are thinking of building a peer-to-peer community product on the learning aspects, and then we'll see how it goes.
Awesome, Amar. And before we proceed into the third and fourth part of the discussion, would like to pause and announce the giveaway. And meanwhile, folks who are watching this stream can comment any questions they have, like in the chat below. And so the giveaway for the products for NHB community would be a coupon called NHB 100, which helps you to get a personalized analysis from the premier, and there are a lot of folks who have benefited from it, like under 50, or 52, or yeah, the class family and all. And maybe like I should ask you, Amir.
Yeah, I think Prabhu, thanks a lot. I think for also sort of collaborating and hosting this event. I think from an absorb perspective, I think it has been a clear sort of killer for us in terms of giving us the greatest insights possible, not only from a data perspective, but building us right product nudges as well as sort of conducting a lot of surveys. And I think all those folks who are sort of listening to it, if I totally have the right kind of belief in the absorb team, and if we sort of feel this, I think they will be able to help respective apps on what can be improved. And I think that should be a real sort of benefit for the teams.
Cool. So let us come back on building a community. So tell us about the 1.0 version of the community product. On what was its scope, and what are the insights which came out of it.
Sure, sure. So basically, the zeroth or the MVP version of the study groups was very limited to a very basic feature where once the user land on it, we were asking them to sort of create a group. We sort of wanted to experiment that either we sort of seed some groups, or we basically let people create their own groups and get friends from across sort of the app into their channels. And we thought that if we take the creation of group as an important aspect, it will create a lot of virality, because students themselves will try a lot to reach out to different students on the app and sort of get them to join the product. So the first version of the study group was a very basic feature where students used to land, create a group name, and then get started. And then we gave them a shareable link where they could sort of share the link with students across the app on different comments. So we started to see a lot of comments across different thousands of videos and lakhs of videos that we have spread with that, hey, this is my group link, can you join it, let's study together. And what we started to see is a lot of start like communities.
Hello. Hello. There's a problem around here. Like we'll be back in a minute. meanwhile, when Amar joins back, like here, anybody like who has questions can put in their questions in the comments here. Yes, we were trying to present something. Looks like there are issues that people cannot see the presentation. Okay. So, sorry that few of you have not been able to see the slides. Like we'll be sending across the presentation after the event as well. Yes, Amar is back. So yeah, Amar, sorry to
Yeah,
disturb you a bit.
yeah, I'm really sorry. I had lost connection for a while. Yeah, please. Yeah, let's continue.
Cool. So we were talking about the scope of the first version of the product, that you were mentioning about things. So, what would users think before coming into a community for an edtech app? Say, for example, for developers think about Stack Overflow, or people who want to purchase might think about Reddit or any other community. So, like, what would people think before coming into an tech community?
So basically, Prabhu, I think one of the key things that so a community has a lot of sort of controls. If we look at from a user end, the admin end, the sort of platform that is running, and a lot of things are sort of needed to be built and sort of configured before a community as a product can get started. But the only thing is that one of the approaches that we were worried about is that we should not end up investing a lot of resources and sort of getting nothing out of it. So what the MVP version that we did is that we sort of thought that we will have a very basic layout of a product where people will just enter in. They will be able to create their groups at the first CTA, and then they can share these groups through a link, and the only mode of communication was chat, a simple text message. We also didn't integrate people to sort of share emojis or basically share images into the group, files, etc. A distant dream, and videos were not even configured. So what we wanted to do is that we went to the tech team and we wanted to understand that if we build a real time sort of chat system, how easy or difficult it would be. So these were basically different elements that sort of we listed that we would want, and against which the team was able to help us with that what it would take for us to build each of these elements. And hence we figured out is that we have to really experiment. There is no point of sort of investing 2 months into development. If we can quickly ship within a week or two, we can gather what the users want. It is maybe that since driven by the simplicity of WhatsApp as a community, I think an excellent product with minimal feature. I think 2 years back now they have started to expand the scope of the products, but if we can go ahead and build with that, I think that would really be helpful. And hence if we look at Prabhu, so what we did is that we simply started with a very simple version where you can come in, you can create you can use text only to communicate, and you can only share. And there were no admin controls. We wanted a very open group. But then once we started to see the traction sort of spike up through the roof, and a lot of people creating groups and inviting other folks, and then a lot of conversation happening on chat, we realized. And then as I was mentioning that it also sort of we saw that the D1 uninstall sort of started to go down by 5%, and that is on an absolute scale, and 15% on a conversion scale, because of the feature. And how we did this is that we tied it up with the core feature. So after asking a doubt, we sort of told the user that since your doubt is now solved, would you want to interact with your friends on the platform? And a lot of students got really motivated and inspired about it and got excited. And hence we were able to sort of reduce the retention, like uninstall on the first day and improve retention vice versa on the first day itself. And that really helped us to understand that this is a very very cool sort of need that we have been able to sort of productize. And now it's the time to understand that, so we basically divided the entire cohort again into three parts, and we did a lot of analysis basis surveys, UX scam, that is watching user recordings of people who were coming and then interacting. And we split across three parts: people who came, first of all, were the people who sort of saw the logo and but didn't come at all. Then were the people who came, saw the logo, entered but didn't interact. Then people who came and interact for a bit and then left, and then people who became a very habitual users. And these were the highest scores. And then across all of them, we understood that what was the thing that was not clear to them, what we can improve, what are the functionalities that are needed. And that is when we sort of took all those insights collated from data, user interactions, calls, and UX scan, and then sort of structured into a particular version wise roadmap. Once we had a very, very clear sort of visibility that it was actually helping us improve metrics.
Yeah. So like once the MVP was decided, like what were the changes which took place to make the feature more discoverable? So how did feature adoption and discoverability happen for this study group feature?
Got it, got it. So, as I mentioned, that we tried to sort of force the user to sort of the user who was sort of asking a doubt and was sticking around. We tried to nudge them on the first day itself to sort of uh, uh, so yeah, just a minute, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, we try to give like gauge the user interest from a lot of places, Prabhu. So for one of the analysis that we try to do is that who is sticking longer and using the first version of study group, whether it is people who eventually study on the app or come to the app for using the core features, or it is the users who basically are sort of not asking doubts on the app but are coming to doubt not only for interaction with their friends. And it is helping us overall boost the sort of DAO MAO engagement as well as retention. So what we did is that for people who were coming and sort of interacting with us over by asking doubt, we added it in all the journeys of asking questions itself. And from a journey perspective, it was very very beneficial for them to basically understand that how they can sort of now further build a use case on the app as a product, because a lot of these people were asking doubts but they were not interacting with these users, and hence they could not ask sort of some of other questions and they were uninstalling. So we added it as part of the journey itself for them. But for other users who were coming only for interacting, we added for such kind of personas who used to come on the app and not perform core actions like asking a question or watching a video, we actually sort of introduced it as the homepage itself. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that we try to identify different user personas who would be the right fit of study groups, who would not be, and then we try to introduce across different journey points and places in the app so that they have the right kind of visibility of the product. Yeah.
Awesome. And what did you do to boost feature adoption, like without releases, like for apps? And what were the intricacies, like when you were building, especially for NHB audience?
Yeah, sorry, Prabhu. Yeah. So
So was
yeah, basically, I think through Absor and also other products, what we were able to do, Prabhu, was that without actually giving out a release, we were able to add a lot of other sort of iterations on basically app open as well as small nudges when they were interacting across the product, and we were able to sort of share more about the feature for prospective users whom basis analysis we were able to understand that who would be the right fit for this. So I think that was really really helpful for us, and thanks to Absorb we were able to do it without app release and make very contextual nudges across. And I think the core two core things was this, that because a lot of our users come from the NHP segment, we used English messaging for introducing the product and came up with very very catchy phrases which were derived from the verbatim that we had actually gathered during our user research trip. So those verbatims actually got really well with the users to define the copy of the product.
Got it. And can you talk about usage of the voice video for NHP audience and why it is relevant?
So basically, I think voice and video is very very relevant because a lot of these users don't are not very habitual in terms of reading a lot of content. So it gets really difficult for us to sort of like for them to actually read in the languages that they have never read before. For example, they are not very habitual English readers, so they prefer that if they can speak out something or they can listen to a video which is actually along with visual graphics is explaining a particular concept, that is something that really something that they understand. So that is why rather than having information sort of or infographic nudges, we preferred video driven nudges for these users.
And coming to the last part of our discussion, can you tell us about like how the feedback was collected and what were the approaches which were used to know if the user is actually satisfied with the feature which is built?
I think user like whenever we release any feature.
Hello, Hamar, I lost you. Hamar, looks like there is a problem with the internet. We'll be back in a minute. So as onboarding and activation has been like one major thing. So like we were so like you can apply that open code NHP 100 on the website appsol.com/app analysis, and I think it helps a lot to do it specifically for an app where it value actually lies in. So yeah, so the meanwhile folks who are around. So looks like there is a internet problem. We'll be back in a minute, and meanwhile, if there are any questions, you can drop it in the comments. And yeah. Hi. Yep. Like we are back.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I think there's some problem with the internet. Yeah.
No
So,
worries.
yeah. So basically, what I was saying is that a lot of product teams, after releasing features, I think forget to sort of get user feedback or test how the metrics are performing. But user testing post release is also as equally important before releasing a particular product feature. And hence, once we released Study Group, I think the entire design team, user research team, and product team focused a lot on collecting as much feedback as possible. And we used basically three aspects to sort of do that. One was basically going through the obviously through the Absor route, looking at all the funnels, all the data, so that we understand what is working and where are the users dropping, what is not working across, how many messages are being sent. Then second was UX cam. So we have an integration within the app, which we used to actually go back to see how users are navigating the across app, and it basically gives us videos of entire user journeys across the applications, and hence we tried to sort of use that. And third was basically of picking up the phone and reaching out to users across different cohorts and personas to understand that how these users are actually speaking about the product, what are the pain points, what are the challenges, what are their understanding of what we have been able to build. And all of this was done on a very, very cohort and a persona level, so that we don't mix and match insights. Because, for example, for class 12th users, it can be a very good feature, but for class 9th, it might not be so good feature. So, those are the kind of sort of post release things that we do. Prabhu.
And can you talk about experiments like which were done using A/B testing, using the feature flag approach, and for what purpose?
Definitely, definitely. I think from an A/B testing approach, I think the key questions that we had, Prabhu, is that we wanted the journey to be very, very simple for the users to join, basically interact with students. So the idea that we had was a couple of things. One is that whether I as a student, would want to join an existing group or a community, or I would want to create my own group and get my friends there. Because from a student's perspective, a lot of ego also comes into the west, that I will not join other friends group, I will create my own group. You have to come to my party, I will not come to your party. So those kind of things actually exist from a student perspective. So we were really bothered that what should be the first city and first action when the student lands, let's say on the like on the product that we were sort of creating. So we used A/B testing to a great effect. So what we did is that in one of the versions, we sort of created the first action. So you land on the group creation page itself, and then you visit anything and everything related to study group. And the second was where you land on a list of existing groups and you can join. And the create group was a small CTA. But as I mentioned, what we started to see is that the traction was at least 2.5x in the cases where we were motivating the students to create their own group first. Because what happens is that in their own groups, they feel that they have a lot of power to express. But in the other group, the student, when we understand their persona inside, basically get really worried that if they do not know a student, how will they start conversations, how will they will be able to introduce themselves. So a very, very good A/B test, a very simple and effective one. The screens were same, but we changed the order in which they were being presented to the user, and we were able to increase the engagement and traction by up till 2.5x on a consistent basis.
And the any other forms of feedback, say like how surveys would be useful, and what are its advantages and disadvantages? Where should it be used and avoided?
So I think while doing surveys, it's very important, Prabhu, that they are sort of we ping the right user at the right time to provide the right feedback. For example, if I open a survey up on the homepage for any and every user who might not have done any action in the past, they will simply, if we make it compulsory, they will simply go through the questions and tap whatever answers that they sort of are at the top without actually thinking that this can be one of the basis of how the product shapes up in the future. So it's very important that we have, as I mentioned, for all the user research that we did, we actually used to break it by the cohorts as well as user personas so that we have feedback for each of them separately, and that is how surveys should also be used. And I think couple of interesting things is a lot of people are not very mindful while sort of filling surveys, and it becomes more important in edtech products. I think like it becomes very important in edtech products because these are kids who are filling that. So it's always, I think, while we were having this discussion, I think Prabhu, you only mentioned that from some of the firms add a very quantitative question at the start of the survey to know that if people are actually reading them. So I think the example was if 1 plus 2 is equal to how much, and if there are people reading, then we can sort of understand and proceed in the same direction. One other thing that I learned from a friend was that what they do is that they add two counterintuitive questions at the start of the survey with very similar answers, and they try to gauge that if the person has not sort of, if the answers are very similar to both the questions which are actually opposite, then it means that the person is not reading the questions, and then we negate their responses. So those are the kind of nitty gritties that also we should look into while we are designing the surveys.
Got it. So, how do you design a good survey questions so that you won't get any the bad data from the users?
Got it. Got it. I think the survey questions have to be non-leading. For example, if I ask that whether study group is a useful feature or not, I think most of the students would say that it is useful, but it doesn't give me any insight. Actually, that whether it is actually solving a pain point or not. So it is very important that so one of the books that I've really enjoyed reading around forming survey questions is the mom's test, where it is that, for example, when you speak to your mom, you have to be very elaborate in your needs and what you are looking at. And the book is based about a conversation with the author's mom, and it's very good in the perspective that if I'm asking the mom about a digital technology product rather than asking sort of opinions, if I go through the route where I ask my mom to explain me the problem that she is facing and how does she solve it right now in the current ecosystem, I think that will give me a lot more perspective than sort of telling that I have created this solution and do you think whether this would be helpful or not. So I think gathering from the user's perspective is important rather than sort of force fitting your solutions into their problems and gathering feedback about it. Because if you give away the solution, then the user's mind already starts thinking about it, and they always will tell you that it is a good thing to build and let's go ahead and build it and I will use it. But when you build it and go ahead and sort of ask them, then they would say that it was not also a valid problem that I paid $1,000 to you for this. So basically, it's very important that we design surveys and questions in the right way and sort of gather the right thing. And I will recommend everyone to definitely read the Mom's Test. It's a very brilliant book on designing good survey questions.
And like out of all the surveys which you have designed, like if you can take an example of a survey for feature satisfaction. So like how was it designed for NHB audience and like the approach for it?
Okay, so basically, we would try to marry the sort of product and the need that it was catering. And for example, one question can be that डाउटनेट पे स्टडी ग्रुप्स का फीचर आपको कैसे लगा, एंड वन कुड बी दैट डाउटनेट पे स्टडी ग्रुप से क्या आप अपने दोस्तों से बात कर पाए या आप अपने दोस्तों से कनेक्ट कर पाए. So these are very similar questions that, but it gives a lot more perspective because it ties up the product with the problem that it was trying to solve. So if the user basically tells us that they were able to talk, so if the user actually would have enjoyed talking to a friend through the feature, they would say yes, otherwise they would say no. But if we simply ask that how did you like the feature, they do not know. If we are asking whether it solved the problem or whether the design was good or whether they were able to understand it. So having asking very very in-depth and contextual questions is very very important. Yeah.
And how do you eliminate bias while what are any special things which you consider while looking at the codes for launching a survey?
Got it. Got it. So, so basically, in terms of bias, it should be that, for example, let's say one thing that so obviously you have mentioned some example, but one of the examples that I really used to sort of request the team to sort of take into consideration is that there are power users, let's say, and then there are laggard users or users who are not using your product every day. If you ask them the same kind of insights for insights and questions, then they will basically give you vanilla responses, and then you will not be able to decide that where you should go ahead with it. So basically it's very important to eliminate the bias that everyone so we basically, and also the second thing, that when we are reaching out to, let's say, power users who are using your product, let's say only for asking questions, and if you have this bias that I should build study products and then I should sort of reach out to only these power users because they are sort of demonstrating this behavior, then also it will be very very wrong, because these features, these people are already using your product, right? And then these people are already using it for a use case related to education, but people who are coming on the app but not finding any particular use case to be solved and they're going back, even they can give us very very good insights as to what the product should be. So it's very important that we understand that we reach out to the right kind of segment, and also we basically do not have a pre-bias before designing surveys. And I think what you were just showing, Prabhu, I think from a study group perspective, while we were sort of creating surveys, I think we created hundreds of them for the right kind of user who was performing sort of right kind of action. For example, people who were not joining study groups but had been exposed to the feature, we understood from them that why, by running surveys through Absor, is that why sort of they sort of saw the study group but they didn't create. And then people who joined, and then obviously the couple of funnels that exist here, the people who got engaged, that what did they like in terms of the communication that made them engage with the feature, and then people who joined but then they left. I think we understood that what was not there which we can build that can help them. So yeah, I think this is how we sort of approach creating service in a very very structured sort of setting. Yeah.
And can you talk a bit about the timing of the survey on when it should be launched and why it is important?
Yeah, I think timing of the survey is very important. That it should be. So generally there are various approaches to it, but I think one of the things is that where should we add the survey in the user journey? That it should not be a blocker for the user as well, because what happens is that, for example, a lot of apps. Uh, and even we have done that add surveys on app open, but what happens is that at that time the user may be in a mindset of performing a particular action on the app, and hence may not give you the right kind of responses that you are seeking about a different third feature which he or she might not have used or might not be in the right state to answer that. For example, if I ask a question about study group on homepage and the user has opened the app to ask a question, and they are very hurried to solve problem statement, they will, and if we sort of make it non like closable, they will go through the all questions randomly, and that would sort of reduce the efficiency of our survey. But if we trigger when they are sort of about to explore the study group, or they have just entered the or sorry exited the funnel of study group, then it might be a right point for us to nudge them. So placement within the app or the website and journey, I think that is also very very important.
And once you have launched it, so is there anything which you do so to filter out data like in a way that it is not useful to you? Like
Yeah, I think it's very important that we have the right kind of questions. Too many questions is a party spoiler, and too less question won't give us a lot of insights, because too many questions takes longer to sort of fill. And sometimes we have seen that if we sort of limit, if we might not have a very good understanding of, let's say, the users, and we limit the answers to four sort of vanilla responses which they are not able to relate to, they would mindlessly click one. I think the Google Form led others innovation is a very, very good option that exists, where if you do not relate to any of the choices, you can basically enter your own thoughts about that. And I see a lot of value being generated out of those options from a lot of users. And also we should keep shuffling the options, because what happens is that if a lot of people are sort of not entering the right information with the right mindset, they will choose, let's say, single option for all of these or randomly choose. So it's very important that we keep doing those things. But I think the most important out of learning that I have had is sort of to make sure that the surveys are triggered at the right time, are adequately in length, and give the user an like option to express themselves, and do not tie up or bind their responses in a particular bucket. Because what happens in those cases, if we have not understood the user perfectly, then we might sort of end up taking the wrong kind of insights from
And for study group, like how did you use qualitative responses to generate good insights from them?
Got it. Got it. I think system for good insights is very elaborate. So taking example of the community product or the study group product, I think what we did is that I want so a lot of students want to have thousands of different features as per their need, but where we used to sort of filter these needs out is basically the number of students who were actually pushing for them, as well as if they align with the overall vision of the product. Let's say we don't want to become sort of a dating app or a chat application, right? We want the core use case to stick with education. So out of all the responses that used to come out of all the suggestions that used to come out, we used to filter one quantitatively, that how many sort of responses are sort of being backed by a lot of people, and then secondly, whether they align with our vision or not, and third, in terms of whether they sort of help us fulfill a core need or not. So if they do not help us fulfill a core need, then that is something that we should not go ahead.
And what do you do if like responses are very, very close? Like, what is the approach to handle like when the responses are very, very close?
I think this is a really great question. So I think sometimes what happens is that a lot of people actually give abstract inputs, or even if they give very, very genuine inputs, two or three people would be very close in what they are suggesting, or two or three fraction of users instead, I think what I should say. But what happens is that then we read the insights with adding a cohort sort of setting into the responses. For example, the distraction and not important might be coming from class 12 users who are using a study group feature, because they are very, very focused, and for them peer to peer learning might not be very important at that time. But internet's too slow might be coming from a particular location of users, or let's say class ninth users who might be getting their parents' phone and might not have access to good or amount of internet left in the day. So while you are reading insights, it's very important to break them down by different cohorts, and to understand that which particular region or users are speaking about it. And then it is a call of the company or the sort of product folks to understand whether this is a need that I want to solve for or not. Like for example, from this, like when we ran this survey, and we understood that a lot of class 12th and 13th users mentioned that they do not want study group as part of the journeys, because it's a distraction for them, and they do not want to interact. We simply sort of removed it from the homepage for these users. But class 9th and 10th users really wanted to interact with study groups, and we made sure that it appears at a larger sort of infrastructure across the app.
Finally, like so, after collecting all the feedback and all, so like, what was the impact which this feature actually brought to the product, and is it really a moat?
So basically, I think if I got your question correctly, it's basically if the feature was really helpful and any suggestion that was really sort of valuable for us. So one suggestion was really valuable, that a lot of people want to understand that how are their group members sort of learning on the app, and whether they are learning a lot or they are not learning at all. How are they stacked up? So what we started to do is that as part of the group framework only, we added a leaderboard approach where you could see that all the group members, how many questions they have asked, how many videos they have watched. So we, within the group only, we try to create a competitive nature to further motivate them to study. And a lot of conversations used to happen about what they are studying and how they can study further. So we basically went through a lot of messages that these people were sort of sending on the group, and from those messages also we used to sort of understand that is there any productization of the sort of trend or theme of the messages that we are seeing. And once we were able to do that, I think a lot of people used to interact with them, and this sort of actually continuously A/B testing and reading users chat, taking feedback from them, helped us to sort of really boost up the number to 2 million messages a day.
Awesome. That's fantastic. And the other thing which I want to ask is like which feedback you consider to translate into the second version of the product and why.
Yeah, so I think one of the feedback that we were continuously getting is that some of the study groups were migrating away from the core need, that is education. So what we wanted to do is that while scaling, it was very important that we do not end up becoming a chat application, but we remain like we stick to the core product that we are, that is basically a education app. So what we try to do is that we try to introduce a array of features that can promote learning within the chat interfaces that exist in the study group. For example, on the app Prabhu, let's say today you start watching a live class, then people on the group sort of are pinged that Prabhu has started watching a live class. Do you want to catch up with him in the live class itself? So those kind of sort of product changes we started to think about and bring, so that people could start planning and keep nudging them towards academic bent of the nature of the study.
And like the very few the startups have cracked the community route, and like it's super brilliant to hear from you, Amar. So are there any other ways other than community to build a moat?
So across the app, do you mean?
Yes, I crossed there.
Yeah, yeah. So right now we have tried to sort of nudge every user to sort of use study group to sort of build the community. But we, as I mentioned, that there are some interactions that keep happening, and we also came up with a community product called as peer-to-peer doubt solving, or sort of doubt pe charcha, where students, when they used to get a doubt and they were not able to get it answered from doubtnet primarily instantaneously, we used to motivate them to post it as a challenge to all the active users on the app. And then we used to create study groups limited to those people who are interested to solve that particular question. And we started to see the community aspect of that come up there itself, leading to approximately 45,000 to 50,000 messages in a day.
Wow. And like very few startups facilitate immersion studies, and also especially at Doubtnut, the founders have been like super interesting in building this culture. So like, can you share like few learnings which you have from the founders at Doubtnut?
Yeah, I think the founders Aditya and Tanushi have been really, really proactively supporting the entire product and design team to go and spend as much time as possible with the founders, because, sorry, with the users. Basically, a lot of products are founders led, but our founders believe that the product should be user led, should be sort of driven by what the users want and solves a core need. And hence whenever we ask them that this is something that we are not understanding, they sort of, rather than telling them why don't you sort of read more about it, they would be go and speak to the users, and the users will tell you what they want and sort of spend more time with them. And they always had this phrase that don't like products for NHB are not built sort of sitting in AC offices in sort of Gurgaon and Delhi. They are being built after sitting and spending more time with them across sort of Varanasi, across Bihar, different regions in Bihar, and that is what we had to do. And I think one of the key things that I learned from the founders at Doubtnut while I was there was that like even they were running sort of a multi-million dollar firm that was very very coveted and had the highest DAO and MAO in the world at one point, was that they used to pick up their phone and they used to sort of speak to 10 users every day.
Wow.
And they still do that, and I think that is something that as a culture got ingrained in us, that if you have to solve any problem, just go to your users and speak to them, spend time with them, and you will understand what they want. And obviously then we have the product framework. And I think again, one of the other interesting thing while building NHB products, and especially in edtech, is that there is no precedent, Prabhu. If you look at all the Western products that have been built, there is a lot of learning that like exists, but the learning behavior of students, let's say in UK and US, is completely different of how the learning behavior exists of students in Bharat. They are not playing Free Fire in US and UK. They are playing different kind of games. So it is very important that we reach out to the users here, spend time with them, understand them, and then build products for them.
Awesome, Amar. And thank you so much, Amar. It has been brilliant. So, like, we had one question from Hamitesh here. So, who wants to understand that if it is, if NHB audience are actually monetizable, like, is monetization exists for such audience over here?
Yeah, yeah. I think thanks a lot, Amitesh. I think that's a really, really valid question. So while a lot of apps that exist in the NHP space have been sort of facing a lot of challenge while monetizing their user base, we believe that if you are solving a real core need, monetization would not be a problem. So I'll take two examples. One is basically Kuku FM. So Kuku FM in at least 18 months or 24 months of operations has been able to get, I think, million plus paid subscriber, and they are sort of spending only for reading audiobooks. I think we would have never imagined 2 years back that NHP users who find it very difficult to spend 10, 20 rupees buying up episodes of content to listen while they are functioning during the day. So basically, what I believe, and then obviously Doubtnut, we see a lot of students who don't have access to good quality education in their vicinity actually get it through Doubtnut, and they are also paying amount online, while they try to do it online or they do it through cash and local ecosystem, but they are doing that. So I think it is basically one driven by how important problem that you are solving, and then obviously at the right price point. And then third, I would say a lot has to be dependent on the quality of the product that we are able to create. So basically, a lot of product actually do feel alien to these users. And if you look at Kuku FM, you look at Doubtnut, a lot of students, our users, find a lot of satisfaction while they are going through them. So we were reading a case study by ShareChat where they said that as soon as they come on the app, and if they find content which is very lifelike, which they see in their communities around them, then it's very easy for them to build trust and stick longer with the product. So I think their monetization, I think it will take time to come up, or for them to buy higher ticket items, higher price items. But right now, monetization is very possible. Again, if we have the right solution, if we have the right product, and if we have the right pricing strategy.
Awesome. So before we close, would like to understand can you explain more about NHP and how it helps other fraud managers to connect them with?
Yeah, I think thanks a lot, Prabhu, for sharing that. So, what we have tried to build is that, as I mentioned, a lot of our learnings were through experiments, surveys, and research, and we did not have a lot of literature to go and sort of bank upon from a learning perspective. A lot of literature that exists first is basically exists for products that have been primarily built for the US or the UK markets, and basically tackle their personas. I think when we are building products for Bharat, there is nothing like a community or a learning resource which we were able to refer to while we were building this or any other product that we have looked at. So it's very important, Prabhu. What I've understood is to sort of have a place where all the related content exists, as well as a network from which we can learn more and sort of give more. So what we want to build from products for NHP as a community is that we want that all people who are working as product managers, designers, founders, analysts, technical folks in that particular domain come together and sort of provide us the right kind of insights which they might have gathered after, let's say, 6 months of research or years of going through the data, and then they share it as and among themselves so that we can build better products quickly and sort of help the transition of sort of Bharat and to India, basically all the tier 2, tier 3 regions to ship to sort of India. So that is what we want from the community that we are trying to build. And as well as we are looking for mentors here, Prabhu, just to add, a lot of product enthusiasts will end up joining and building for Bharat, or sort of who remain in India will be building for, let's say, Google version of India or Bharat, Amazon's version for Bharat. And if they don't have the right kind of knowledge, and if they just paste products, frameworks, and sort of without actually speaking to them, I think it would be a real problem. So we also want to build a mental pool whom the young college graduates and talent can look up to, and they can learn more from them. So yeah, these are a couple of objectives, Prabhu, for the community, and always anyone and everyone who are listening out here. Sort of, we would really want all of you to join us and help us further this mission of sort of creating standard playbooks for building for Bharat,
And
and also the
also,
next half billion. Yeah,
yeah. And also, please do subscribe to the page, and
yeah,
especially the Medium blog, where very interesting articles are being written. And like I can vouch for it, like they are out of personal experiences, and
yeah.
which are very rare. And before we close, any final thoughts on apps for Amir?
So, so I think, I think one of the key instruments while building for Bharat through Doubtnut has been Absor. Absor has been really instrumental, as Prabhu mentioned, on sort of giving us the right kind of user insights, on giving us the right kind of tools and frameworks to build the right kind of nudges to drive user to the right sort of products that we have for them, as well as conduct surveys. And obviously, the analytics has been top notch, Prabhu. So I think thanks a lot for helping us sort of build the right products. And I think, yeah, I think very proud of being associated with Upson, and I think hopefully a lot of other folks also use it. Yeah.
Thank you, Amir. Thank you so much for the audience who have who joined in, and thank you so much, Amir, for sharing specifics of building a community which are very clear, Amir. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Prabhu. Thanks to you, and thanks for the NHP team, Absorb team, and I think thanks to you, I think you've been a real sort of motivator that has helped us get this session. So thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Amir. Take care.